If you want to understand the Book of Mormon and its wonderful, unique teachings, then by all means, read along with me as I share this entire book from cover to cover. I love this book and the things it teaches about Jesus Christ and about happy living and about eternal truths. So let's go ahead and get started with Mosiah Chapter 13. And if you want to get caught up on previous episodes, then see the Book of Mormon playlist. So in this chapter, it is in the middle of a few chapters where a prophet named Abinadi is teaching a group of very unrighteous judges, priests and a king that are all very wicked. He's come into their court to teach them about Jesus Christ. They've already threatened to kill him in a previous chapter, and this time he's come in disguise and he's preaching to them again. Let's get started with Mosiah 13. The italicized summary says, Abinadi is protected by divine power. He teaches the 10 commandments. Salvation does not come by the law of Moses alone, and God himself will make an atonement to redeem his people. Verse 1, Now when the king had heard these words, he said unto his priests, Away with this fellow and slay him, for what have we to do with him? For he is mad. And they stood forth and attempted to lay their hands on him, but he withstood them and said unto him, ... We'll get there in a second. But just as a reminder, there's a couple of other chapters where he's already been preaching and teaching, and they're already as mad as a hornet's nest that's been poked because of the things he's saying. He's just preaching the commandments, and they don't like it because they say, we already follow all these commandments and we only want to hear you preach good news of cheerful, happy topics. We don't want to hear you call us out. And Abinadi, of course, points out that they are not indeed keeping all of the commandments, and that he has a message from God that they need to back off and listen to. All right, verse 3, Abinadi says, Touch me not, for God shall smite you, if you lay your hands upon me, for I have not delivered the message which the Lord sent me to deliver. Neither have I told you that which you requested that I should tell you. Therefore, God will not suffer that I should be destroyed at this time, but I must fulfill the commandments, wherefore God hath commanded me. And because I have told you the truth, you are angry with me. And again, because I have spoken the word of God, you have judged me that I am mad. All right, so we'll just pause there. I really like these two verses because he's pointing out his faith in God, that God is not going to let them kill him or hurt him or haul him off until he has delivered the message that God has given him to deliver. And that's incredibly beautiful faith. And I think that that connects in our lives, that as we're doing the best we can to follow God, worship Jesus Christ, that their protection and guidance will be with us as we're doing the mission we've been sent to do. That doesn't mean we'll never be hurt. I mean, as you'll see in a little while, Abinadi ends up dying. He ends up being killed, burned alive by these individuals, but he is allowed to finish his mission. And God will do the same thing in our lives. He will help and protect us as we honor and worship him to fulfill our mission. That doesn't mean anything bad isn't going to happen to us, because it will. That's a normal part of life. But that the bad things that happen to us will not ultimately disrupt an important mission from him as long as we are following him. And I like this truth too in verse 4, where he says, You are angry with me because I have spoken the word of God, and you judge me that I am mad. Again, pointing out that the Book of Mormon is written for our time. This kind of thing happens all the time in our world today. Some people, if they hear truth, it makes them angry. Some people, when they hear truth, they say the messenger or the truth bearer, the person saying the thing, is crazy. They're mentally ill. They're nuts, right? And so we have to be really careful to have judgment, correct judgment from and through the Holy Spirit, so that we can judge what is true and what is not. Because just because someone says someone else is bad or wrong doesn't necessarily always mean that they are. And just because someone says that an individual is mentally ill or crazy doesn't necessarily make that so. You need to look at motives and purity of heart. Humility and meekness is a required set of virtues if you want to understand truth. If you do not have that, humility and meekness, you might accidentally judge truth to be falsehood. You might judge a messenger who's giving a true message to be crazy or bad if you're not in a place of humility and willingness to receive God's word and to look at your own heart and say, gosh, what is God trying to teach me, or how do I need to improve? That should always be the way we approach what we're learning. Okay, verse 5. It came to pass after Abinadi had spoken these words that the people of King Noah durst not lay their hands on him, for the Spirit of the Lord was upon him, and his face shone with exceeding luster, even as Moses did while in the Mount of Sinai, while speaking with the Lord. And he spake with power and authority from God, and he continued his words. All right, so Abinadi has this lustrous, like alteration of his visage. His face appears bright, like it's glowing, and that would be some kind of gift from God. And I've read of various instances of that happening to prophets in the past. So this is now happening to Abinadi, so that the people listening can clearly see he's favored of God. God's power is upon him. What he's saying is true. I think it's just one way that God can get the attention of some very wicked people in a moment, and he has their attention. He is not being hurt by them. They are standing back and listening. But as you'll see, as people who do not want to hear and do not want to understand and do not want to improve, they won't. So regardless of the fact that this thing is happening, he's having kind of a transformative experience right before their eyes, they're kind of compelled to listen. They still don't listen, which is a good proof that, God might use some supernatural powers at times, but we still have our individual agency, and it's still up to us to choose whether we want to be humble and meek and learn and listen from prophets of God. All right, so Abinadi is saying, ye see that you have no power to destroy me, or to slay me. Therefore, I finish my message. Yea, and I perceive that it cuts you to your hearts, because I tell you concerning your iniquities. Yea, and my words fill you with wonder and amazement and with anger. But I finish my message, and then it matters not whither I go, if it so be that I am saved. But this much I will tell you, what you do with me after this shall be a type and a shadow of things which are to come. And this is very interesting, because what they do with him, of course, they end up killing him in a very brutal fashion. And if you skip way forward a few chapters, that ends up happening to a lot of the priests and the king, for sure, when circumstances change, because they always do. If you're on the top, you'll eventually be on the bottom, and vice versa. Life is always changing. Verse 11, and now I read unto you the remainder of the commandments of God, for I perceive that they are not written in your hearts. I perceive that ye have studied and taught iniquity the most part of your lives. And now you remember that I have said unto you, thou shalt not make unto you any graven image, or any likeness of things which are in the heaven above, or which are in the earth beneath, or which are in the water under the earth. All right, we'll just break through there for a second. He's just going over this law of not having graven images. But I like in that previous verse how he says that I know that you know the commandments, but they are not written on your heart. And there's a huge difference between knowing what the commandments are and having them written on your heart. Having them written in your heart means you actually understand what they mean in your world today, and how maybe you might inadvertently slip into breaking that commandment, even in a small way, and how, what kind of guardrails can you set up to keep that commandment. So it's not just about knowing how to recite it or knowing how to justify yourself in saying that you're all good, but recognizing even small ways that you might be breaking that commandment, and having your heart so much in tune with the love of God that you really don't want to break that commandment. You're not looking for ways to justify, but you're looking for ways to be obedient. So this commandment about not bowing yourself down to false idols, that's one where if it's written in your heart, you really understand that it's not just about having, not bowing down to some graven image and praying to some a statue, for instance, which most of us don't even feel a temptation to do today. But we do feel a temptation to worship our phone. Are we always turning to it for answers? Are we always giving it our attention and energy rather than our family members that need our help or attention, or vulnerable people that need our care, or, of course, most of all, our worship of Jesus Christ, our awareness of Him in our lives, our desire to honor God and to be connected to Him. And what does that look like in these moments where we're turning to our phone or, a football game or whatever else that kind of gives us that sense of being in control? That if we really have the commandments written in our heart, we know that it's not just about checking a box, being able to say, hey, I'm good with that. But to say, in what small ways might I be vulnerable to worshiping a graven image, basically worshiping the workmanship of your hands, putting the love of material things that people make and sell, buying and selling, getting, how do you put that above God? And most of us, if we're really honest, will say we do that every day, and it's a constant battle to remember to put God first in every moment, and not just on Sundays, or not just saying, hey, I don't worship a statue, so I'm fine, right? All right, moving on. Verse 13. Again, thou shalt not bow thyself down unto them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquities of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generations of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. And of course, we want God's mercy. We want his love. So we do not want to be lumped together in a group of people that quote unquote hate God. We want to love him, honor him, keep his commandments, and receive his mercy. Verse 15, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. And I might say there are multiple ways to take God's name in vain. One way that people take it in vain is to use God's name or names of deity as swear words. Super inappropriate, totally normal and popular and just like trending these days, but super, super inappropriate because it's disrespectful to our Creator, that to whom we should have the greatest level of reverence and honor for. But another way that we take God's name in vain is to say or represent ourselves as someone who worships God and put that out as like our image, and then not fulfill on that. You know, like say, oh, sure, I'm a God-worshiping, church-going type of person, and meanwhile ignore the need to care for the poor and needy, to reach out to the vulnerable, to be kind, to be loving, to actually spend your time in prayer, to actually care about reading your scriptures, attending church, making the Sabbath day, you know, God's day, doing the things that actually lead to or are part of a godly life. You don't do that, but you say you're a godly person, then that's taking his name in vain, because you're saying, oh yeah, I'm totally into Jesus, but then you don't do anything about it, then that would be taking his name in vain. All right, verse 16, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day, the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and the sea, and all that is in them is. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. And I really appreciate that in the last decade, I would say maybe a little less than that, there's been a lot of additional teaching and emphasis around keeping the Sabbath day holy in my wonderful Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The whole idea behind it is not a checklist of like making sure you absolutely don't do this or you absolutely do this from some external list. But I love what President Nelson, our prophet, has taught about that, which is it's more of checking your heart and saying, what sign am I giving to God by the activities that I'm choosing? What am I saying to him in the way I'm conducting myself? And I know for me, I want God to see me as honoring him and really trying to tune into him rather than, again, making excuses for things. And I'll admit there are times that I do something that I think, yeah, if I'm in my very best place with the Sabbath day, maybe that's not the best thing to do. Like sometimes I'll like order something on Amazon or decide to run the laundry. And these are personal choices. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I'm saying for me, I do think it's better honoring God if I can say, hey, that is not really putting my energy into him. I would be better to wait till Monday to do that. I will be the first to admit sometimes I do things like that on Sunday, but the overall contour of the Sabbath, I have found to be so fueling for my week and for my connection with God as I focus entirely on him and his work, which can be time with family. It can be a nice walk with, my husband. It can be a lot of things, but it needs to be primarily like the focus, the intention The whole intentionality of the day is, how can I make this all about God? All right. So, verse 20. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. That is one of the 10 commandments that is broken 1 billion, probably plus times per day on this planet, because so many kids have turned against their parents. They say their parents are bad in a lot of ways. And as a therapist, I'm the first one to tell you, I totally get it. If someone's had a lot of trauma, a lot of really bad experiences, you got to work through that. And sometimes in some pretty extreme scenarios, there has to be some boundary where there's not very much contact. But I would say that should be way, way, way more rare than it is. And it's an unfortunate epidemic that a lot of parents are suffering from the withdrawal of their children's love and affection. I really appreciate what a lot of other longer term cultures, many of them Asian, that just love and honor and revere that not only their elders, but their ancestors. I think we could learn a lot from that, and that 100% connects to this commandment to honor your father and mother. All right, verse 21, thou shalt not kill. And of course, Jesus said in the New Testament, don't even be angry with your brother, right? Because it's the same spirit. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. And again, Jesus Christ said, not only don't commit adultery, don't look on someone to lust. And we have a very lustful society. If we really want to, and I'm speaking in broad general terms, this again is an individual journey, but I would say if we really want to be serious about this commandment to not commit adultery, we need to avoid, again, what Jesus Christ said, don't even look upon someone to lust. And so in my mind, that is very, very clear that media that triggers lustful thoughts or kind of like drills down in on lustful moments, make out scenes, bedroom scenes, that is just not a good way to spend your time. I personally think that as disciples of Jesus Christ, we are not spending our, if it's 2 minutes, 30 seconds, 5 minutes during that portion of media where it's focused on the bedroom scene. I think that's the kind of thing we should fast forward or skip over entirely or choose a different movie. It is very hard to find movies that don't have those kinds of things, but if you're aware, you can read, on blogs and on different forums that tell what kind of content is in the movie. You can be aware and you can either choose not to watch it or you can skip over that portion. This is one of the 10 commandments, is not to commit adultery. And Jesus made it very, very clear that looking on someone to lust is the same thing because you've done that in your heart. And I don't think that when you're watching a movie and there's lustful things happening on the screen, I don't think that just because we're not engaging in it, we're guiltless. We have mirror neurons where we're watching someone engage in something and it feels like it's happening to us in our own head. So I think it's just something to be very aware of. Again, people are going to make different choices and it's an individual journey to figure out where those lines are. But I'm just throwing that out there that although an unpopular and inconvenient choice, I highly recommend fast forwarding or skipping over entirely films that have lustful material in it. If we really, really want to honor God and obey Jesus Christ and live like Him, we will avoid situations that trigger lustful feelings. Okay, thou shalt not steal. That's another one we struggle with today, just in small and big ways, around trying to always get the better, bestest deal. And sometimes actually downright taking something. It's a huge temptation that some people deal with. Okay, 23, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, nor thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. And how we would put that in today's terms would be don't covet his boat, his truck, his bigger house, his anything, or his extra pretty wife, or the wife's extra good-looking husband, or their great careers, or their obedient kids, or their nice vacations, or anything. It's the whole don't keep up with the Joneses, don't even think about it. Just do you and do it wisely. And that's what God will put His stamp of approval on. But basically keeping up with the Joneses is Ten Commandments. And the difference between coveting and righteous striving is coveting is you don't even want them to have it. You just want to have it for the sake of appearances. And righteous striving is you're interested in and willing to put forth the work to improve yourself. That's different. So you have to check your heart and find out what the difference is. And of course, back in verse 23, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. We are committing violations on that one every 1.2 trilliseconds in this world. Like, it's happening all the time on social media. People that pass on mean and inappropriate and rude things. And so a lot of things, we would be way miles ahead if we just shut our mouths and quit talking. If you don't have something nice to say about someone, for real, stop talking. Just stop. Just don't. It doesn't help elevate the human species to say mean things, rude things, and heaven forbid, untrue things about other people. So some really good advice would just be to shut our mouths and to keep our fingers from clicking things on the keyboard when we really just need to quit. All right, verse 25, it came to pass that after Abinadi had made an end of these sayings, he said unto them, have you taught this people that they should observe to do all these things for to keep these commandments? I say unto you, nay, for if you had, the Lord would not have caused me to come forth and to prophesy evil concerning this people. Just one more little thought. So as I was kind of giving my spin on some of these commandments, I was 1,000% aware that everything I was saying was unpopular. You know, who wants to not watch the steamy scenes on the movie? Who doesn't want to always kind of get the very, very best deal, even if it leaves someone out in the cold? Who doesn't want to say, exciting things on social media to make you look smart, cool, and good, and someone else to look bad? Who doesn't want to say, oh, my parents are such jerkwads, I hate them and I don't want to talk to them? Like, so many people do that because it makes them feel like the hero and like they're so much, better than their parents. These things are so tempting and they're everywhere. So if you think it's unpopular to hear about it today, well, same thing was going on with Abinadi, with the King Noah and his priests. They did not like it because all these things are things that the natural man wants to do. So they didn't like it. But anyway, we'll continue on. He's telling them, no, you did not teach your people to obey these 10 commandments. Verse 27, and now you have said that salvation cometh by the law of Moses. I say unto you, it is expedient that you should keep the law of Moses as yet. But I say unto you that the time shall come when it shall no more be expedient to keep the law of Moses. And moreover, I say unto you that salvation doth not come by the law alone, were it not for the atonement which God himself shall make for the sins and iniquities of his people, that they must unavoidably perish, notwithstanding the law of Moses. So he's making it very clear that yes, keep keeping the law of Moses. It's there for you to keep as long as you're supposed to do that. But the law in and of itself does not have any saving power. It is the atonement that's going to be made that has the saving power. And now I say unto you, it was expedient that there should be a law given to the children of Israel, yea, even a very strict law. For they were a stiff-necked people, quick to do iniquity, and slow to remember the Lord their God. Therefore there was a law given them, yea, a law of performances and of ordinances, a law which they were to observe strictly from day to day, to keep them in remembrance of God and their duty towards him. But behold, I say unto you that all these things were types of things to come. And now did they understand the law? I say unto you, nay, they did not understand all the law, and this because of the hardness of their hearts. For they understood not that there could not any man be saved, except it were through the redemption of God. So I love this link that he's pointing out that the law of Moses was given to the children of Israel, specifically because they were a bit stubborn-minded. I don't think we're that different, but they were so stubborn-minded that without a very strict law, they would pretty soon wander off and just do their own thing and, go down some rabbit hole of sin. So he gave them a strict law to keep them in order, but they didn't even really understand what the reason for the law was, but they did keep it. And if you go back and read the Old Testament, you can understand why they kept it, because God kind of scared them a few times with annihilation if they didn't. So they learned to be obedient if they wanted to stay alive. But he's saying it's not the law of Moses in and of itself. It is the redemption through God. For behold, did not Moses prophesy unto them concerning the coming of the Messiah, and that God should redeem his people? Yea, and even all the prophets who have prophesied ever since the world began, have they not spoken more or less concerning these things? And again, I love this because in the New Testament, some of those earlier church members after Jesus Christ died, they really had their work cut out for them to convince people that Jesus fulfilled this law. We are now working in a new system of Christianity, and this is a continuation, an evolvement, and a step up from where we were in keeping this law of Moses. But it's the same thing as continuing on, but it's stepping up and evolving. It's not a whole separate system, although it appears to be. Again, it's just a step up. Verse 34, have they not said that God himself should come down among the children of men and take upon him the form of man and go forth in mighty power upon the face of the earth? Yea, and have they not said also that he should bring to pass the resurrection of the dead, that he himself should be oppressed and afflicted? So there's the end of the chapter there. And just by way of random trivia, when the Book of Mormon was translated, there was no punctuation or even or paragraphs or even chapter breaks, none of that. And so the chapter breaks, if it seems arbitrary, it's because it is. It's just, hey, we can't have every chapter be 1,000 verses long. So it's right in the middle of Abinadi's speech and the chapter ends. So we'll pick that up next time. I hope you're really enjoying learning more about Abinadi's testimony about not only the 10 Commandments, but really affirming this idea that the law of Moses was fulfilled and done away when Jesus Christ performed the atonement, and that before Jesus Christ came, it was lawful and right for individuals to keep the law of Moses, but there was something greater coming. Okay, I know these principles are true. I'm so grateful for the Book of Mormon that helps to back up these biblical claims that Jesus Christ did fulfill the law of Moses, and I will see you in the next episode.